Yake sa tinil te katiuhan gonarchis hadi ade se ganin ko a kachal at yagi ya ako a ya yagi wuch kana khutu ade uhan achoe hatua sigu kachal atat yu qautula atke. Welcome in everybody, and tomorrow is Elizabeth Pradovich Day, but since we're meeting today, we want to talk about Elizabeth Pradovich. Dakunyagi aya tsik disi jinkat kajik kajin yawachiyadis. It's Thursday, month of the Black Bear, and 15 days have passed this month. So once again, happy Elizabeth Pradovich Week. On Tuesday, we left off with some really good conversations about the Alaska Native Brotherhood and the Alaska Native Sisterhood. And Shaksani Keek shared some really good insights about the founders, the 12 founding members of the ANB. And we went over, in terms of historical context, the right to citizenship and voting, the right to have a say in land claims and land rights. And when Elizabeth and Roy Pradovich joined the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood, that's when things started focusing more on ending racial discrimination in Alaska. So again, this is when we talk about racism in Alaska, especially for Native people, it's very close to home because the harm that was caused by racism directly affected our families and continued on through the generations. And so, just a trigger warning, we do talk about racism when we have these conversations, but it's also very important to be aware of our history. And one piece of advice I give to my students when we talk about racism and racial healing is try to reroute if it's very human and very natural and normal to feel angry and upset, but our purpose is not to incite anger or hatred in you, but to guide you to reroute those feelings towards something positive and maybe celebrate that your learning the Tlingit language is part of a long history of progress by Native people in Alaska and in the country to restore our cultural pride, revitalize our languages, and make a better world for our children and grandchildren. So, that being said, where we left off was the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Alaska Native Sisterhood conventions. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how the conventions are run. And one thing that Shakhsani Keek mentioned to me is that at the end of the annual convention, I feel like I'm jumping ahead of myself. Shakhsani Keek, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Uh, no.
Hmm. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about the way conventions go. Um, I'm not in the Alaska Native Sisterhood, so I feel a little out of my realm talking about it. But what I'll do is share the notes that Shakhsani Keek taught me, and see if she has anything to add. So at the end of the annual convention, as we mentioned last class, each community has a camp number. And when they started to organize, because the interest was so widespread across communities in Southeast Alaska, everybody would know, oh, that's Camp 3, this is this community. They would know the community by their camp number. So it helped them stay organized. It helped them keep things in line when they would meet for the annual conventions in terms of taking turns to speak and give their input. But at the end of the annual convention, a community would sign up to host the next convention in their community. And if you signed up to be the hosting community for the next convention, a committee would make sure that everybody had a place to stay in that community. So certain members, if they're from the hosting community, might say, for example, "Oh, my uncle and my grandchildren will be coming. I can host them," and making sure that everybody who goes to visit would have a place to stay. Uh, Another thing we talked about is that local members would sign up to host the amount of people they were able to take in. And then also at the end of each convention, there would be a big social dance. Um, and then, so deciding on the next hosting community, they would make an invitation if the community already knew that they wanted to host the next convention, then they would make the invitation. If there was no invitation, then a community would be asked if they could host. And that was all my notes. Shaksani Cake, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, you have to remember that at that time there were no hotels, so it was really important. They had a committee that actually went around to different members and say, okay, we have this so and so that needs housing. We need somebody to take them in if you have room to take them. That would really help. So, uh, and they they did that uh, until all the people were taken care of that was planning to come for the convention. Well, it was uh, known in advance who was going to plan to come because they had to make dinners to feed everybody.
Mm.
So that was another committee with the women, and that's when we also talked about men who became ANS members uh, were really welcome as cooks, and because a lot of them were really excellent cooks and serving a lot of people and planning. So everything seemed to really gel. Make sure the NB hall is in good condition, everything working, and so uh, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot more to it than what I'm saying because uh, I never did get in on the planning, but I do know the housing and the meals and the place where they had the meetings were important. So it was like today. I don't think at that time that they had a photographer. But I was telling that Anna that in the history, when you start looking for ANS history, you see photos, and I think if you want to do a study on the groups of people that still know who the people are, and they try to list them and things like that are really good. And the young people are also assigned work as servers, uh, just setting up all kinds of stuff. So it was involving not just the A and B ANS members, but the A and B Junior, ANS Junior, were put to work and given assignments. So yeah,
Nice. Um, Another person we wanted to highlight in our planning discussions for this week is Peter Simpson. And is it okay that I switch gears to Peter Simpson, Shirley? So Peter Simpson was Tsimshian, and he was the one who helped the young men organize the way that they wanted. He was very sharp. He was very highly accepted by the Tlingit people and was the advisor for several years of the Alaska Native Brotherhood. He's famous for having said around 1929 at a convention, "Do you like this land and is it yours? Then fight for it." And this is when the battle began to sue the government. And so the famous case is Tehitan versus the United States. In 1929, a big goal of the Alaska Native Brotherhood, like we mentioned, was to have a say in land claims because here there are new people walking around on the lands. They're saying that they own the land and that they're in charge. So a lot of the motivation for the Alaska Native Brotherhood at this time was to have a say. And so that's Peter Simpson's famous quote.
Yeah, it was im important to the people to get this through. And the way they started out was was to hire lawyers to sue the government, and lawyers have to be paid. So I remember uh, my parents, uh, people would come to the house and say, "We need money." And in a discussion, of course, I don't listen to the whole thing, but they would reach into their pockets and make a donation. They would take up a collection to keep the lawyers paid. So it took quite a long time to get this solved. So when the state of Alaska Natives decided to for the land claims, the Clinkets advised don't use lawyers because it takes a long time and it costs a lot of money. So they used a different method to and approach, and I'm not familiar enough to talk about that with land claims issue.
Mm-hmm. Nice. We wanted to highlight some of the major accomplishments of the Alaska Native Brotherhood and the Alaska Native Sisterhood of their time. And to do this, we reached out to Marvin Adams, who was the A&B president in 2020. Is he still the president, Shirley?
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, he still is the president.
yeah,
And wow, now I feel famous because we talked on the phone the other day. Uh, he provided this presentation that he made for Professor Willie Hensley's UAA class, and the presentation is called Alaska Native Organization. So he put together a really nice list of accomplishments, and I'm going to take you there. Okay, so one of the items is that the Alaska Native Brotherhood gained recognition of Native rights as citizens. They won the right of Natives to vote. They integrated public schools, and they extended the workers' compensation law to cover all people. They include Natives in aid to dependent children, secured direct relief for elderly Natives, brought the IRA to Alaska, brought hospitals for Natives to Alaska, which are now under U.S. Indian Health Service. They also helped champion the first Natives to be elected to the Alaska Territorial Legislature. We talked about that a little bit. They initiated Tlingit and Haida land claims suit, which legitimized Native claims in Alaska and paved the way for the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, or commonly known as ANCSA. They influenced the passage of the territorial equal rights law. They were instrumental in admitting natives to pioneer homes or elderly homes. They initiated the passage of Alaska state equal employment opportunity law. They were instrumental in amending state school districts' EEO law to include race to promote hiring Native teachers. And they were instrumental in the passage of the Alaska Subsistence Law and in the development of the regulations. Those were some of their major accomplishments. Shirley, did you want to add anything?
Do they have any questions on any of these?
Any questions, you guys?
Yeah, I have a question. Just I love this list. It's awesome to see. And also just wondering if you knew of some upcoming initiatives that the ANB, ANS kind of had on their radar, what they think is really important in 2024, major items on their agenda, possibly some directions they want to go towards.
Yeah, that's a good question. Last time I looked at their website, they have some memorandum of understanding and some public statements. The last one I saw was on taking a firm stance on Black Lives Matter. But if you scroll through news and events, these are just some of the projects they've been up to. The latest stories. The Klukwan Library receives recognition for subsistence food film series. Having an MOU with the USDA Forest Service. Public service announcement on Elizabeth Pradovich. And standing in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. How about anybody else? Does anyone else have insight on latest initiatives at Alaska Native Brotherhood?
Does the ANB, ANS have a stance on language learning?
That's a good question.
Or would you like to see them take a position on that as far as like civil rights goes? Maybe there's a such thing as language rights.
I'm just snooping around their website while I look. Does anyone else have insight on it? Let's see what kind of scholarships they have. Oh, this is just an application page. Looks like they contribute to scholarships at University of Alaska Southeast, but I don't see anything in specifically for language learning.
There was that House Bill 123, I think it was. Are you familiar with that?
No, which one was that?
The one that made all of the indigenous languages of Alaska co-official languages of the state of Alaska.
Oh yeah, I do remember that one.
But I didn't get to read the original version of that bill, but I know that it was what was eventually, I don't know if published is the right word, but finalized. Was a very stripped down version of the bill that was as it was originally put forward. And when I first was made aware of this bill, like I wasn't taking language classes, but now that I'm doing language classes. It seems a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah. That one, I believe, was introduced by Representative Jonathan Christ Thompson. Let me find the bill because it's a good one.
So this is off topic, but I'm wondering if we're going to be talking about William Paul again. He's the one that I was joking looked like the guy from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to see it yet.
Yeah, so I found out that I'm actually related to him, and my mom just talked to his kids a few days ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so yeah, he's my relative, my yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. You come from a good family.
Yeah, I feel so lucky.
Yeah. So this is
Renee,
house. Oh, go ahead.
Renee's got the history of this bill and talking with oh my goodness, Liz on his podcast. This is the season finale for season 1. So if people want to learn more about the history of this bill, who was involved with sponsoring it, the versions, some of the amazing speeches and words our elders said during it. It's a 45-minute listen, and the podcast is called The Tongue Unbroken.
Oh,
You can look it up
cool.
for free anywhere online.
Yeah, The Tongue Unbroken is an excellent podcast.
Oh,
Nice cheese.
Uh,
Yeah. I haven't heard of that.
I can play it during one of our prep periods, so we could give it a listen. But yeah, here's the bill, House Bill 123. It was by Representatives Tiffany Zolkowski, Jonathan Christ Thomas, Harriet Drummond, Sponholz Fields, Tar, Dan Ortiz, and a few others I'm not familiar with. But it says an act providing for state recognition of federally recognized tribes and providing for an effective date. This is interesting when it comes to tribes because tribes are sovereign native governments and they're recognized by the federal government of the United States. But having them recognized by the state of Alaska is an ongoing challenge. And so this says the history of tribes in the state predates the United States and predates territorial claims to land in the state by both the United States and Imperial Russia. Indigenous people have inhabited land in the state for multiple millennia, since time immemorial or before mankind marked the passage of time. This looks like a different bill from the language one.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, this is a different one, but this is something that Barbara Blake, when I worked in Governor Walker's office for Barbara Blake, she was a senior advisor. This is something she was working really hard to get passed was state recognition of tribes as sovereign governments. Okay. Sorry for looking up the wrong thing. Yeah, I'll have to do more research and see if I can find out more. Were there any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I was thinking about tribes as sovereign governments, and then I was thinking about language and like at the UN, it's kind of famous for all the interpreters and translators that work at the UN. Thinking about how cool it would be if there were interpreters and translators that had to be present when legislative things are going on, say at the state capitol or something like that. And maybe why that isn't happening and thinking about language equality.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was first learning Tlingit and living in Juneau, um, the bill that made Alaska Native languages co-official languages of the state had already passed, and I wasn't there for that, but the buzz in the legislature was around Administrative Order 300, and that was something that came from the governor's office that was recognizing a linguistic emergency for Alaska Native languages and also increasing collaboration with tribes. Um, and so that one had to do with our tribal governments and also state recognition that we needed to work harder to preserve our native languages. Good question. Okay. So switching gears a tiny bit to Kachgalat Elizabeth Paradovich. Elizabeth Paradovich Day, like we mentioned, is Friday, February 16th. Her Tlingit name was Kachgalat. So go ahead and repeat after me, Kachgalat.
Kachgalat.
Yeah.
Cloud. Cloud.
Uh,
Yeah. Underline K and underline X. So one more time, Kachgalat.
Cloud.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good. She was Llukach Edi, and born July 4th, 1911. One of the things we talked about, Shirley and I, was that her involvement in Alaska and American civil rights was inspired by her being turned down for housing when she moved from Sitka to Juneau. She and Roy had some housing lined up, and then they arrived, and the landlord said, "Oh, actually, we can't rent to you because you're native, and we only rent to white residents." She became president of the Alaska Native Sisterhood in 1940, and she was essential in passing the anti-discrimination law of 1945. This is an image of the coin that has her image on it. This was minted in 2019 and it was limited edition. And I can't remember if we talked about it in this class, but it's out of print now. Is that how you call silver dollars? I don't know if you'd say print. But it was debuted at the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood annual convention. She's famous. A famous quote of hers came from her testimony to end or to pass the anti-discrimination law. And she, in response to one of the senators, Alan Shattuck, she said, "I would not have expected that I, who am barely out of savagery, would have to remind gentlemen with 5,000 years of recorded civilization behind them of our Bill of Rights." So, if anyone's been in Juneau in the Capitol building during a debate that has to do with getting a House bill or a Senate bill passed, it can be a little intimidating. And so, my first time going to the debates around the emergency order for recognizing our linguistic emergency, I went there because I was encouraged by my teacher, Rene, to go. But as soon as I walked in, it's all, marble building, big, heavy stairs, placards everywhere. You have to find the right room, and be there at the right time. And for me personally, as soon as I walked in, I turned right back around because I was like, nope, not today. I was too intimidated by the official feeling of the place. There's a desk where you have your committee from the Senate or House, depending on which side it's being debated. And then you can go up and give testimony, but to give testimony, you sit at a desk and face all of these people, and they're very official and serious, and they're doing important business. So they'll say, by the book, state your name and the organization you're representing for the record. It just feels very, to me, it was very intimidating. And so I just wanted to share that. I started to turn around, and then I kind of looked back and I saw Elizabeth Medicine Crow, who's the president of First Alaskans Institute, and her mom, Della Cheney. And they were just welcoming me in, like, come on, come in, sit down. And so I went and sat next to them. But the reason I say all that is to illustrate my experience in the Capitol during one of these debates and how like stiff and intimidating it can be. But I just think that Elizabeth Pradovich had so much courage and bravery to be this eloquent when she's standing up for civil rights in Alaska. And it was following a pretty racist comment by Alan Shattuck.
Yeah, and she took her knitting everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
She was busy knitting when they asked her to speak.
Yeah. That's awesome.
We did in our earlier discussion. There were people that were concerned about us, and I'm glad you mentioned the legislators that are trying to do things. And that during the time of this battle, Senator Diamond was a big player in the whole issue of encouraging Roy and Elizabeth to write up the anti-discrimination law for Alaska. Imagine how intimidating that is to do something like that. So what he did was, on his own, he collected anti-discrimination laws from all the different states, copies of it, and he brought it to the Paradovich couple. They used that as the basis of coming up with the law for Alaska. So we had people, and I shouldn't say non-native, because there were people that were native that were not Tlingit, that really worked hard to help us in regards to the language. And I don't know if you remember the history of A&B, and that they felt that it was not good to have people be in Alaska Native Brotherhood if they spoke Tlingit. So if they're supportive of teaching the language, I don't know how it would look, but I'm sure they do, because throughout the Alaska Native Brotherhood conventions that I've been to as a child, there were people at the meeting talking to each other in our language, but in speaking up, standing up and speaking, they used English for all of the requests.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm not sure today, because I haven't been around the AMBA-NS for a long time, know what kind of support they have. And I think that the language became alive in the work that was done in Juneau. in teaching the young people. It was, I think, a couple of guys that uh, really learned the language at the university. I don't know if it was at the university or what program they were in. Uh, and that began, I think, the new group of speakers to bring the language back to life. So uh, uh, in our discussion, I think that there is a change. It's really different uh, than what I grew up with, but the language is still alive. That's what I really appreciate. Mm.
Goodness, geez.
Language does change with time. If you look in the old Webster dictionaries, you're going to find that out, even in English.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did you want to say anything more about that?
In the changes,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, now the things I used to hear as a child and in speeches
Mm,
uh, really, really different than the language I hear today. Uh, and uh, the fluent speakers, when we get together, uh, we really appreciate the new speakers, but they do have an accent, and we began to call it the university accent.
mm,
So it was really common for the northern speakers to have that.
mm,
I think the writing and the spelling has really kind of set us straight on the path that we need to go,
mm,
so that we all agree as to what it's supposed to look like in order for us to use it. And, because at first, and we find that in the older writings, uh, everybody just made up their own kind of writing,
mm,
and it was hard to translate unless you knew the native word for the item that we're talking about.
mm. Yeah, that's a fascinating point. I never realized how much conversations have to take place behind the scenes in order for that a type of agreement to occur. I think the orthography, like you mentioned, the writing system that the Downhowers use has been really helpful in unifying how Tlingit is written in Southeast Alaska. Um, I didn't realize how important it was until I started teaching. And then I would meet with people. Like, I teach for several different organizations, and I have my teacher. I come from a certain lineage of teaching. Khone was my first language teacher. Shakhsani Kik is my mentor. And so I follow conventions that I've learned, and I think they have good meaning and good reason. When I meet with different people from different organizations who teach in other institutions, we have to have discussions about, well, for kids to learn literacy, do we use punctuation? It's important in the English side, but do we also include it in the Tlingit side? And if you guys noticed, Shakhsani Keek and I do not use punctuation because we want our learners to rely on seeing the question words in the sentence to know that it's a question. But there are also, I can see other people's points of why they want it included in terms of using Tlingit to teach literacy in schools and in young children in school programs. So, yeah, it's like Shirley mentioned, language changes through time. People have certain ways of speaking and writing, and it's when you see something that's unified, now I'm learning a lot of work and cooperation went into making it unified.
I am not familiar with uh, what they teach to children
Mm.
in the classroom, and
Mm.
when I hear them,
Mm.
I notice that they really do speak uh, Lingit well, and I don't know. Uh, there's something I haven't looked into is to find out if the children are taught names for new things that are now with us. Um, and you'll notice in the knock knock things that we'll work on
Mm.
contain, and this is what I used to hear as a child, a lot of English words. They didn't bother to try to translate it. If they can, they did, but a lot of
Mm.
times it was a lot easier to just grab onto the English word and use it.
Yeah.
Everybody understood it. Yeah.
Yeah. In the knock knock, do you mean like when we say fruit cocktail, cup bananas, teen?
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. Other words we know that are loan words are dana and kahwe.
Donna is actually the word for silver that we
Oh.
always had that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's
Oh,
a,
hold on. Dang, I didn't realize that.
yeah. Yeah.
Donna. Okay, go ahead.
Because of the silver dollars and stuff.
Yeah. I hear all this time I thought it was a Tlingit pronunciation of dollar.
No.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for telling me that.
So Chief Donna Walk,
Yeah.
Silver Eye.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I always thought it was like it's about his I thought it was a reference to his glasses.
No.
Oh,
That,
dang.
that isn't that's what we call glasses though in Tlingit,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
Wakdana.
Waktana. Yeah.
So it's reversed.
Oh.
Just learned this word in the Kenach or Kenach CD that I've been listening to like every day for the last few months. Donna Yakate or something like that
Yeah.
for silver.
Silver color, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that when the silver dollar went away, it was still applied to the paper money because it became the name of money.
I see. Thank you for telling me that. All this time I thought it was a loan word from dollar.
Me
I'm
too.
just,
That's fantastic.
yeah.
So if you
Okay.
have a daughter named Donna, that means money.
Oh yeah, there it is. Track 8.
Oh yeah, track 8. Okay, since K Watch mentioned this phrase for silver colored Dana Yachyati, I'm just gonna play it on Johnny's recordings. So I'm gonna scroll down to track 8 and let's just hear him saying it.
It's silver.
Dana Yachyati. Dana Yachyati.
It's gold.
Gun Yachyati. Gun Yachyati.
It's copper.
Ekliachete. Ekliachete.
The cat is gray.
Chawuchiachete. Wadush. Chawuchiachete. Wadush.
What about goon, Shaksanikik?
Boone is, I don't, not really sure about that one,
Yeah.
but Ayahiati is, it's not, it's not saying it's silver. It's saying it's like silver.
It's like silver.
Ahyati. It's like gold. It's like copper.
Mm. Nice.
Uh, then there's a different term for saying it's silver and it's gold.
Mm. Would that be Dana Yeyati?
No, Danach City.
Oh, Danach City.
Danach City.
Oh. I was gonna do that. Okay. Okay, Dana City. It's silver. Cool, gonna teach. That was all I had prepared for our slides, and we still have 10 minutes left. Shaksaniki, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I want to talk about subsistence.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the latest things. My brother was still alive at that time, and everybody was really excited about using the word subsistence for putting up food.
Mm.
And so he inquired to find out, so what is it going to apply to everybody that goes out to pick berries and to put up fish?
Mm.
Yes, the state law said it would apply to anybody
Mm.
did that. So he turned to a native group to say that it's not right for the white people to call what we do with food subsistence,
Mm.
but it's their word for the way they handle food. They can freeze food, they can freeze the berries, all those kind of things, than what we used to do with it. So he objected to uh, having that uh, word applied to just generally across the field, and I kind of think that he was right
Mm.
that uh, that we should have worked a little bit longer on that and try to say that uh, then it would be treated differently, because now if you say, yeah, I'm subsisting, so you catch a lot of salmon and freeze it and send it to uh, California or somewhere and sell it.
Mm.
In Alaska, they don't allow you to do that. If you catch something for subsistence for yourself, you can't use it to make money against the law,
Mm.
but it's constantly done by non-natives.
Mm.
So um, I think it's worth looking at and trying to. I don't know. It's probably too late to try to make any changes, but it should have been something that was more. We should have been more careful about
Mm.
using an English word for what we do with food.
My family here on island are fishermen in Alaska. They take their boat up to Alaska.
Mhm.
That used to be like my uncle, well, it's my mom's cousin. That used to be like his only income, but I think he's like doing other stuff now, repairing boats and other stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. You bring up Shaksani Kik about the word subsistence. I know that the last annual meeting I attended for my regional tribal organization, Tanana Chiefs Conference, we talked about that. Don't use the word subsistence to describe our way of life because it incorporates so much more than just harvesting food. And so we were trying to come up with words for one I commonly hear is our way of life.
Yeah, it's really common for the fish and game. You go there, I want a subsistence license. Oh, okay. You know, they don't even ask who you are, if you're from Alaska or anything.
Yeah.
My great uncle is a fisherman all his life, and I'm still sad to this day that he passed away. I cried so much.
I'll just share. I'm just pulling up the state of Alaska definition of subsistence just to kind of look at it. So this is the state of Alaska website on the Department of Fish and Game page. And it says, what is subsistence use? The harvest and processing of wild resources for food, raw materials, and other traditional uses have been a central part of the customs and traditions of many cultural groups in Alaska, including Aleut, Athabascan, Alutiiq, Euro-American, Haida, Inupiat, Tlingit, Tsimshian, and Yupik for centuries. The Alaska legislature passed the state's first subsistence statute in 1978 and established subsistence as the priority use of Alaska's fish and wildlife. The law defined subsistence as customary and traditional uses of fish and wildlife and highlighted the unique importance of wild resources and the continuing role of subsistence activities in sustaining the long established ways of life in Alaska. And then customary and traditional use determination. It says in Alaska, a customary and traditional use of fish and game populations are protected by state law, and the Board of Fisheries and Board of Game must provide for those uses first before providing for commercial or recreational uses. To decide if a fish stock or game population is associated with customary and traditional uses, and thus to a subsistence preference, the state regulation says the boards must look at 8 factors. The factors are called the criteria. I don't mean to laugh. I'm just noticing how complicated it is and how you can wordsmith the laws and definitions to gain or reduce power. So this is not my realm of expertise. I'd be happy to look into it. I know people who are heavily involved in Alaska Native rights when it comes to our ways of life with fish and game.
Yeah, even just looking at this first criterion, a long-term consistent pattern, but like what is consistent, right? That makes me think of, fish camps or something like that, and then my mind goes to like the Douglas Indian Village like, oh, you weren't occupied year round, so we're just going to burn your village. Yeah, about what you were saying about wordsmithing, and so possibly writing in loopholes. So if you weren't consistent, it's not subsistent, and therefore you don't have a first use right or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm recalling also Liz Medicine Crow was talking about, this was during the Presbyterian apology, and she was saying this is all done for the land. Like all of the laws were written so they could gain access to our land. Just it's hard to forget that.
It's exactly right. It's a very key point as we learn the history of where we're coming from with colonization and the work that needs to be done. It's very important to remember that this is all around land.
There's a paper I was reading, and this is old news, but just why the blood quantum exists and why we have to be, a certain blood quantum to say like harvest um, sea otter or something like that. Um, and it's because it's the indigenous people here are an impediment, an obstacle to access to the land, and like versus like back in the day um, to be black, you only had to have like one drop of African blood to be black. And that's because the blacks were an asset, right? And so you wanted to increase that asset. So like that's why it's opposite with blacks than it is with indigenous people. And it's just helpful to remember that.
Yeah, blood quantum has a big impact on our lives. Okay,
Maybe
good to.
what maybe what you would do is to change the law so that if you can't prove that you're native, you can't get a subsistence license because it's open to everybody right now.
Yeah, yeah. When I was reading that definition of subsistence, it included Euro Americans.
Yeah. So they are doing what they usually do: come up here, get the fish, and take it with them. So
Yeah,
they're doing their traditional thing. So,
right. Yeah.
so I don't want to go to blood quantum, but just to say uh, to have some kind of proof that they require a lot of proof of things, so it shouldn't be that hard to take your tribal card or whatever to prove that you're native and you can get subsistence license,
Right.
and have a different kind of license for those that come up here just to get our salmon.
Mm.
Because subsistence applies not to just uh, fishing, but deer meat, berries, uh, all kinds of things like that stuff that we usually use. So sometimes we'll get in our head subsistence. Okay, I do the fishing and smoking and drying. Uh, there really was a lot more to. In fact, my parents, I think, used to come up with a whole program for the summer because they knew when to go and where to go at different times. Uh, Another thing that white people are not aware of is, and they accuse us, these people, they don't know how to claim land. That was
Right.
accusation that they had. You never hear about ownership of lands, and that's not true. We have ownership of lands in Huna. Uh, there's land where there is just tons of blueberries, but you can't go there. They say, okay, I'm going to go and take on this land, and you have to get permission from them.
Mm.
what that does is you get permission from them, and then it kind of reminds them to go too. So you have all these people going into one area. So I was really well aware of uh, uh, different ownerships of who things belong to. That because I used to hear the women talking about we should go. Let's see if we can get uh, permission to use that somebody's land to pick berries. Well,
Geez. That's all the time we have for today. But Shakhsani Keek, was there any closing thoughts you wanted to share?
um, no, that was I think there was all these issues of 15 issues that they accomplished for us. I think it it would serve us well to be aware of the battle that the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood did to get the rights of living at the pioneer home before you were not allowed, as a native, not allowed, uh, and all the different rights for um, that were accomplished. I think keep it in the forefront of our thoughts. We talked a little bit about the fact that, and this is something I really admire about the Black people, is they are given various things across the nation, and they really take advantage of it. We were given Native American month, so I'd like to see what people say. I hear October, I hear November, so it's, you know, when is it, and what did we do that day? Juno, I think, does something, a little something during that month, but I think we all need to pitch in and start sharing our thoughts and history and language during that month, so that our young people uh, would hear about it and take pride in who they are. Ganachish.
Yeah, Kwati. All right, folks, we've been told we got 9 months to organize our plans for November. And Gunalchish Yuhan Hati Adi, Gunalchish Ye Janayi. Thank you for coming here today and for your work. Nish Kakuge, I see these awesome words you shared, and I'll put some slides together for our next class. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week on the same Zoom link on Tuesday.